Back there. Awesome. Well, I'm really happy to be here. The last time I was here, I came with my baby girl, who's now 8, so it's been a while. Yeah, what have I been doing? What have you guys been up to? My episode of Continuum that I directed just aired in Canada, and I think it'll air on Sci-fi in a couple of weeks. I don't think they're that far behind. So I hope you love it. It was like probably the most challenging show I've ever directed in terms of action. There's a massive action sequence which takes up the last act and a half. And I had so much fun throwing people through windows and flying people off rooftops, as you do. Supernatural, I don't know, have they aired all of season 8 here? Yes. So a lot of people didn't like me in Supernatural, which was weird because it was the first time I had ever done a show where I got like hate mail. And like a We Hate Naomi club started on the internet, and I was like, what? So, but it was awesome. It was a great experience. Everything you've heard about the guys is true. They're lovely, lovely to work with. It's a great crew. I think a lot of them have been with the show from the very beginning. So it felt very much like walking onto Stargate, where there's just a sense of family to it, which was really nice. And what else? Arctic Air, which is a Canadian show I'm directing coming up in October. Yay, Canadian show! Yeah. And a couple of little projects on the go, so cross your fingers for me. But what I like to do in these kind of panels, because I find the best stories come out of your questions. So if anyone has any questions they would like to ask me. Hi! Well, hello! It's the girl who bounces from the photo session. How lovely! Hi. Oh, hi.
So, this is a short story question. So, the episode in Sanctuary with the girl kiss, I watched it with my first girlfriend, and we cried when we watched it just because it was amazing to watch. To just see Helen, and just, it was beautiful. So thank you, and you loved it. But now I just have you read or how do you feel about Carter Magnus?
Wow, really? I have not read any Carter Magnus fic. Wow. Wow. I wonder how Jack would feel about that. How do you want to watch? It's true. Wow. Yeah, I have not read any. The kiss on Sanctuary, the idea of Sanctuary was Sanctuary for All. It was a show that we wanted to put out the message of embracing everybody. We're all incredibly different. I mean, I look around this room, we all look different, we all think differently, we all have different religions and different sexual preferences and different ideology and different politics, but it doesn't matter because we're all here in the same room celebrating our love of science fiction. So the idea of Sanctuary was to embrace that idea. And we didn't want the kiss to be this big, dramatic, ooh, you know, look at Helen's kissing a girl, yay. We just wanted it to be really natural, and we wanted it to feel like, and Helen, who's been around forever, no offense to the men, but I would imagine would get somewhat bored after a while and want to experiment. So it just felt very natural. And it felt like the right thing to do at the right time, and it wasn't, you know, originally it was written that they kiss, and then it's sort of, whoa. And I said, well, wouldn't it be great if Helen said, wow, I haven't been kissed like that in a long time, intimating that there were more women in her past. And so that's what we went with. And the crew was very funny. Like all our camera guys. And Martin Wood directed the episode, and he kept yelling cut, like really early. And so, first take, he's like, we start to kiss, and he goes, cut! And I'm like, Martin, just let the kiss happen, man. Okay. So we start the kiss, and he's like, there, cut! But it just, it was the right thing for that show. In terms of embracing and celebrating everyone. Thank you.
My question is, why was Sanctuary canceled? It looked like it was a great show. It should have kept going. What was the reason for it?
I agree. It was a great show. And we were in 170 countries. And I think it was just, to be honest with you, it was timing. It was a sort of a perfect storm of negative things. So it was Sci-fi not making a decision fast enough. Our studio came up for lease. The people who financed the show, who actually financed the entire series, got nervous and said, well, if Sci-Fi's not going to pick it up, our Canadian broadcaster had picked it up in other countries in the world, but we needed the American sale. And because the studio was coming up for lease, they were like, done. And it was devastating. I was shooting a movie at the time. I was shooting Random Acts of Romance, and I got the call saying, yeah, we've got 3 days to get out of the studio. What? I was absolutely devastated. But having said that, I think that we are trying to get something with the intellectual property happening. So
you're going to try to get a 4th season or whatever season eventually together again?
I don't know that we'd get another season. We might try to do some movies.
Yeah.
Nothing guaranteed. Again, it's really down to our financiers, but we're working with them now to try to figure something out. So.
Okay, and if that happens, would that be direct-to-video or a real theatrical release?
I don't know. What seems to be happening now, which I think is really cool, is direct-to-market, which is putting it up on iTunes, and which is what we're trying to do with Space Milkshake, just make it immediately accessible to everyone. But again, I don't know.
Well, I wish you luck on that. It was a great show, and it's too bad the Sci-Fi Channel couldn't get its act together in time to save it.
Yeah, I think they had a lot going on to their defense. There was, Comcast had taken over NBC and blah, 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 all the politics of business. But yeah, it would have been great. We were very disappointed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I've been curious about something for ages. As somebody who's been both blonde and not blonde for a long time, do blondes really have more fun? And can you give us some examples?
Oh, wow. Well, I was blonde my whole life until Sanctuary. And when Sanctuary happened, I wanted to create a character that was so physically different from Sam Carter. Because Sam Carter is just so special to me, and I didn't want it to be, oh, Sam Carter's on another show with an English accent. Ain't that weird? So I wanted just to create a completely different character. So when I first went brunette, I was like, oh, I kept looking in the rearview mirror wondering who was driving my car. Oh, who is that? And then I got kind of used to it, and then I really loved it. I thought it was like a new kind of sexy, I liked being brunette. But now it's sort of bleached out by the sun, and I'm going back to my blonde roots. So I don't know. I'm kind of in the middle ground right now. Do blondes have more fun? I certainly had a lot of fun as a blonde, but I've had a lot of fun as a brunette. I get treated differently. Men treat you differently when you're blonde. Just happens. And women are nicer to me as a brunette. General, gross generalization, but yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Examples. I'm not going to give you examples.
No. I was going to say I have seen pieces of art here, but because we're down here, you don't see much of anything. But congratulations on that. I was going to ask you about Primeval, because they're in the middle of your episodes that you directed, and I think Sharknado got in the way last week.
Sharknado.
I'm afraid so. I turned it on looking for dinosaurs, and I said, oh no.
Sharks.
But is there anything in the works there? Because I was hoping that if Sci-Fi or U.S. market picked up anything, maybe they'll extend it and give it another season.
I hope they will. It seems to be doing really well on Sci-Fi, in spite of the Sharknado exemption. So I don't know. I mean, I think everyone's sort of in a little bit of a precarious holding pattern right now, but I think it would be great. I loved shooting that show. I did 3 episodes, and the cast is phenomenal, and the crew was great, and the dinosaurs were problematic at times, but they just like to eat. It's so weird. But yeah, I would love to see it come back. I think a lot of it depends on how it fares on Sci-Fi.
Canceled it.
Yeah. Well, officially? No, a while they did. They're not showing the rest? They're doing a marathon. Well, there we go. So the holding pattern is...
It's not on today, and it's on 6 episodes next week.
6 episodes next week.
What series?
Primeval New World.
You didn't get a picture yet?
Two things. One comment and one question. A comment. I've had the pleasure of meeting 3 of
is
your
that William
coworkers. Emily Ulrich speaks very highly of
Oh, I love
you. She
Amelia.
was beautiful. Chris was hilarious.
Which Chris, judge or hired on? Chris.
She had, I don't think I stopped laughing the entire conference.
Yeah.
You've worked with some phenomenal looking men, and 8 of my favorites. Ed Crowder, Richard E. Anderson, and Peter Wingfield. So out of those 3,
Oh,
come on. For a girl who I would just drop to meet any one of those 3 men. Which of those 3 were your favorites or would be the most amazing? And I don't care if you worked so many years with Richard, but who's up with that one impression?
oh my, that's such a tough question to answer because they're very different. Ben is gorgeous, but a gorgeous human being. He's a gorgeous man. He is a Southern gentleman. He's so sweet. He's so professional, and he's got a great sense of humor. But he's just like, he was honestly so nice. I loved going to work with him. Rick is like my big brother. He's just, I can't say enough great things about Rick. He came on to Stargate, and he could have come on with a lot of ego. I mean, he's MacGyver.
But the hair was gone.
But the hair was gone, thank goodness. No offense to the mullet, or hockey hair, as we call it in Canada. But he was so terrific, my God, and so funny. And as the show, I watched you watch later episodes or later seasons of Stargate, and it's like, oh, it's just Rick. He made O'Neill so much his own. It was so fantastic. And Peter Wingfield, we had such a cool relationship because of the Helen dynamic with him. Like, it was just, he's very sexy. He's a very sexy man, and he's a very gracious man. And I don't know, that's hard. I can't say enough about all 3 of them. Pick a favorite.
Yeah.
I mean, I would have to go probably with Rick, and again, because I did spend so much time with him. Yeah, thank you.
Hi, Amanda. I'm gonna guess. First of all, I don't think a guy could get away with asking that question. My real question is, in Sanctuary, I did support and embrace the premise of rescuing and providing, freedom. But speaking of freedom, I get the impression all those creatures spent their lives in that cage. Did they ever get any taste of their true environment, or even refer to it in the show?
What we tried to do with the creatures that we brought in was as much to protect them from society as it was to protect society from them, because some of them were very dangerous. But if we had let some of those creatures out into the world, they would have been hunted down and killed.
I didn't mean so much into the world, but in some enclosed place that
We absolutely created environments that fit the creatures, yes.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, I'm glad.
Okay, thank you. Hi.
I have one observation. You're hilarious.
I like that.
I was wondering, how did you transition into doing directing, and if you would ever consider directing a romantic comedy, because I think you would bring a fantastic sensibility to it.
Oh, thank you. The transition to directing was something that I had asked about in season 3 of Stargate. At the beginning, one of the heads of MGM came up and took us each out for dinner and said, "So what do you want to do? How are you feeling? The show's going well." And I said, "I really, really want to direct." And this, I believe it was the beginning of season 3. Michael Shanks also said, "I really, really want to direct." And he directed in season 3, and then I had to wait till season 7. So I was aware that there was a bit of I had to prove myself in a big way. But the beauty of Stargate for me was it was like a 10-year PhD in filmmaking. I spent so much time on the set. I watched what every single department did. I sat behind the monitors and watched how the director of photography set up shots. I watched how directors did their coverage. I followed grips around for a week, electrics, everyone. So that when I left Stargate, I had a really amazing education in what everyone on a film set does. And I knew when I left Stargate to start up Sanctuary that I wanted to direct Sanctuary. The hard part with that was that I was on the show so much. So I only ended up doing 3, and that was simply timing. But when Sanctuary finished, it was I had this weird, I'm going to be totally honest with you, I had this very strange, I had been on television for 15 years, and it was the first time that I didn't have a show to go to. I wasn't going to be at Comic-Con. I wasn't going to be at the upfronts in New York. Come September, when the shows all rolled out, I wasn't on one of them, and it was a real crisis for me, because I was like, who am I if I am not that girl that's on that TV show? You know what I mean? It was really weird. So it was a big step for me to sort of put my name forward as a director, and Primeval stepped up. They were awesome. And it was while I was shooting Primeval that I guess word had gotten out that I was doing pretty well, and Arctic Air came calling. And from Arctic Air came Continuum, and now hopefully I'll do more Continuum, and I'm going back to do more Arctic Air. So it was a very natural progression, but for me it was a real tug of the heartstrings, because I love directing, but I love acting. So I was like, I don't want to just be a director, which is awesome, but I also wanted to keep acting. So it was, and then Supernatural came along and offered me a bunch of episodes, which was awesome. So, but it's been a very natural progression. But I'm also aware that as a female in this industry of a certain age, that my options are limited and the roles are limited, and I needed to carve out a whole new niche for myself. And directing has been proven to be creative and scary and wonderful, and so it's been a very organic progression. And I feel very lucky that I'm able to do that, because there's not a huge number of females directing, and certainly not directing sci-fi. So I feel very lucky.
What about the romantic comedy?
Oh, romantic comedy, I would love to. I would love to. And I've been in romantic comedies. When Sanctuary finished, I did Random Acts of Romance, and I loved that. And I loved that our director, a woman, Katrin Bowen, laughed every day on set and so thoroughly enjoyed the process. Laughed to the point where we had to do retakes because the director's laughter was coming over the set. But it was great. So yeah, we'd love to do a romantic comedy. Thank you.
Hi. I actually adore Naomi. I don't hate her
Thank
at all. She's one of my favorite characters. When I was 13, my dad handed me a copy of Dragonflight by M. McCaffrey, and that was the book that started me and my interest in sci-fi and fantasy. It just opened up whole new worlds for me. Was there a book or movie or experience for you that got you interested in science fiction and fantasy, and what was that?
Well, I got really into Star Trek Next Generation when that was, yeah. And I had a friend who was really into it, and so I would watch it with her. And then doing reading, Zachariah Simpson's 12th Planet was a revelation, and Stephen Hawking's. But I started reading Stephen Hawking's books because of Stargate. That's how I did most of my research. So, yeah, they were very formative. But I would say probably Next Generation. I mean, there were other sci-fi shows that I kind of watched because my brothers were watching them. And I've said this before, but I was kind of busy watching Little House on the Prairie. So, but I would say Next Generation probably was the one that... And we watched the original Star Trek, too, in deference to Bill, who's here somewhere, in this massive hotel, but yeah. Thank you.
I know people ask you all the time about behind the scenes on SG1, so I'm going to change it up a bit. Do you have any fun stories that you can tell us from behind the scenes of Atlantis?
Oh, Atlantis.
Yes.
Probably one of my favorite episodes to shoot was with David Hewlett and Jewel State. We did an episode called Trio, and we laughed our heads off every day. Just because they're two incredibly funny people, and the three of us together is a goof fest in the making. But, and because it was kind of trying, like we were in this tilted box that actually was on a big gimbal. The set was on a gimbal. We were on these big beams, and even though we were safety, I have a almost paralyzing fear of heights, which I've really been trying to work through. But I am walking across this beam, and I'm supposed to be the confident one, and Jewel and David's characters are supposed to be really afraid of heights, and the two of them are like hanging out on the beams and just like whatever, and I'm like to the point where I actually at one point got halfway across walking across this beam and I froze. And it was one of those moments as an actor where you're like, and the whole crew's just going, oh, keep going, keep going. And I was like this. And I saw David Hewlett and he looked me in the eyes and I was like, David, I'm frozen. I can't go any further. Oh my God. And I looked over at Jewel and she's like, what's up, babe? And the safety guy had to come walking across the beam and take my hand and lead me back. And so that was really embarrassing. So then the next time I went up on the beams, I was like, I'm going to conquer this beam. I'm conquering it. I don't know, they must have cut around me because most of the time I was like... The other thing I remember about that episode was our catering had these breakfast sandwiches, which are so bad for you. But Jewel, who can apparently eat anything she wants and not gain weight, ate one every morning, and she called them the crack sandwich. And she got David and I into them for that week, and then I paid for it for the next month. But it was just a lot of fun. I mean, it was one of those where it was just the three of us in the episode, and we were filthy and scared and laughing our heads off. So I will always fondly remember that.
So, as Sam Carter and a member of SG1, you commonly had to come up with solutions for certain catastrophes that were imminent, whatever situation you were in, sometimes with the help of other people. But in your opinion, what was probably the craziest solution that Sam Carter came up with for some problem?
I think blowing up the sun was pretty good. I was like, what are the repercussions of blowing up a sun? If somebody blew up our sun, not so good, right? Yeah, I would say that was the one where I went to the producers and was like, really? They're like, you have to, it's going to save the day. And I'm like, it's a sun. Can I do that? So yeah, I would say that was probably the craziest. I mean, she was always thinking on her feet, which is what I loved about the character. And I'll tell you a funny story about how into Sam Carter I was. And some of you may have heard it, so I apologize, but I was so into the research for this character. I wanted to know exactly what I was saying. I wanted to really intrinsically understand it. I wanted to be able to explain it in layman's terms. So I studied. And we got this one